Mazecast. This is, I think, the second episode in our season 2. This is one of the first episodes where my name is Brent. If you haven't seen me, I think I was on one of the other podcasts. And Vincent kind of wants to step down and not talk as much. So we're gonna see how that goes. I mean, he's pretty brilliant and brings a lot of insight, but I totally get getting burnt out or doing feeling like you're doing the heavy lifting. So I'm gonna step in, and for at least the next 2 podcasts, we are going to cover some subjects that go beyond just doing in-depth room research. And before we start tonight's episode and talk about the layout of the maze, I want to switch it over to Spee really quickly, because there was a pretty significant announcement that White Raven made in the last week or so. Spee?
So the truth of the matter is that White Raven has told us some bad news. I don't know if it could be considered bad news. I guess it is for us because we all love the site. So he said that there's a time limit that he's put on the site of about 4 years. So he started the site close to 3 years ago now, and he notified us about a week ago that in about a year he's not going to be replying to anything. For the most part, he's only going to be accepting new members based on the fact that if they're not trying to sell Viagra or something like that, then he'll make sure that they can join. But other than that, he's not going to have any part in the website anymore. So this sort of prompts us to get off our asses and find out who the guide is. Otherwise, we might never know. That's really
So the whole thematic hook that he envisioned was that. Being that there are 45 rooms in the maze, he intended for the website to be active and be accruing new solutions for only 45 months.
Right.
And so we're already most of the way through that, and September of 2016, I think, is when he said those 45 months are going to be up.
Right. So we do still have some time, like around a year and a couple of months to still try and hammer out what's left. And go ahead.
Especially the identity of the guide. That's the big thing that we really want to try to get White Raven to confirm before we lose him, essentially.
What are we up to? Like 75% or something on the maze? Fully solved?
about 60 or 70%, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so with that in mind, like I was saying, most of the other year 1 in Mazecast was all about going and diving into each room. So for the next couple of podcasts, what we want to do is is try and take a look at it from more of a top viewpoint. Take a look at the forest more than the trees and see if there's anything else that we can glean from our study of maze using that approach. And it's really good for me to step in here because since I started a few months ago, my approach really has been my interest has been in trying to create diagrams to figure out what the layout of the maze really is, and it took me a couple of months to really get a grasp on it, how all the connections work and where they go to and how the maze is laid out and that sort of thing. So I'm going to start going over that tonight. So the first thing that I would like to talk about is I had this, when I first started out, I had this big spaghetti mess diagram. All I did was really take all the rooms and connect them using arrows. I have some diagram software that I talked about in a previous session that basically makes it easy for me or easier anyway, than just drawing programs. It's easier for me to just grab like a circle and move it around. It's flowchart software. So I used that, and after I got all the links, it really was just this. I mean, I literally went like room 1 up in the upper left corner through room like 15 and created links, and it was a big mess. So the last few months I've been straightening it out, and finally I did know from, I hadn't taken a really deep look at the images that are on into the Abyss, but I did know enough to know that White Raven has broken up the maze into 3 main sections. There's the path, which is the shortest path through the maze, or other rooms that are encapsulated in that area. There is the loop, which is most of the rest of the maze. Actually, it's interesting. It creates a big circular area that he calls the loop. And then the third area is the trap, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. I did want to show off my initial diagram. Let me try and blow it up a little bit. So this is actually what I ended up with. I mean, it's kind of hard to see the exact room numbers where they are, but oh, good, you can see my cursor. So in here, this actually shows, if you had this diagram shows connections between the three areas of the maze. I kind of put the abyss in the middle, which is where all the red lines go to. So page 24, where there's no return, everything kind of sinks into that, or there's at least 4 rooms that go there. So the main area, the path, I have to be careful. Sometimes I like getting loop and path mixed up. The path, which is the 16 steps, is encapsulated by this central circle here. It's in the middle of everything, and in my diagram here, let me focus on it a little bit more. It goes around, starts at the top, goes around. Room 4 is kind of in the middle, and then it goes back around. I have a cleaner. You know what? Let me step to a cleaner image. I did want to show you that there are links overall between them.
Before you leave, Brent, I just want to say I think it's really kind of amusing that this diagram actually kind of looks like a raven. And I think it's around and commenting.
That was my whole concept. I'm like, whatever it ends up being, it's got to end up looking like a raven.
Are you serious?
No, I'm not serious. That was no. That is funny. I didn't even notice that. You're right. I'm sorry. I'll take a look at the path in a second. The only things I want to do that are takeaways is it's interesting. The real value of looking at this overall one is it is interesting that there are very few connections between these areas of the maze. Room 1 being the main way that you travel between the path and the loop, and those 2 big areas. And then aside from that, there are multiple ways that you can get from the path to the trap, and 1 or 2 ways that you can get from the loop to the trap. They're all these orange arrows here, but they're all one-way trips. There is of course, once you get to the trap, you can't get back anywhere else, and so they're by default they're one way. But also, aside from room 1, I think it's just room 1. There are either no or very few ways to get between the path and the loop and travel back and forth. There are numerous one-way trips from the path to the loop, which are the purple ones that I have here. These are all one-way doors that go into the loop. So the overall construction of the maze basically consists of the path and then a whole bunch of ways to get off of the path, either ways that are just going to take you down an endless drain to the trap, or going to take you to an entirely different section of the maze that you basically have to find your way back to room 1 to get back onto the path anyway. So that's the overall layout of it. Now my layout, I'll talk about it later. My loop is a little bit different looking than his, but let me talk about the path now. Let me switch to a different image. And before I do that, do you guys have any other comments or questions about what's going on before I take this thing down?
You know what this brings up for me is I always wonder how Manson constructed the maze. Like, was he drawing little diagrams like this, or how did he do it? I often kind of wonder how he came up with the structure himself.
Yeah, well, and that's what's really interesting to me, too. One of the reasons why this book is so interesting is, I mean, I do a lot of role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder, and I've done a lot of, well, I've done some design work for that. I've actually published an adventure and that sort of thing. So, and it's basically a special type of technical writing that is fairly creative, which I can't see how he could have possibly created this without, definitely designing it this way. I mean, the chance of this happening where, none of the there are no links between the main area and the side area. I guess maybe he could have just built that as he was going along, but I'm sure he at least had a concept of what he wanted to do, if not necessarily, all the pages laid out. So who knows? That would actually be a really good question for him. When you were designing this, what did you use? How much design work did you do before you even, set pen to paper? So.
Well, he already gave the answer to this. He said he did not use a map for this.
He
Oh,
did?
really?
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. Somebody, White Raven, relayed this. It was really just a freebie. He just said that Manson had checked out the Abyss and the maps and stuff, and he said this is not how I did it.
Wow. That's.
Well, nonetheless, he must have at least had the concept.
Yeah. He
It
must
is hard to
must have at least
a
had
definite path.
of the loop only having the one exit back onto the path. Like he must have
Right.
whether or not he planned out whether or not he really diagrammed the loop, for instance, fully.
Right.
That may not be true, but at least I'm sure it's deliberate that there's only the one connection between the loop and the path, and so you have to get all the way back there in order to return to square one.
Yeah. Yep. That makes sense. Cool. Well, let me find my picture
Maybe
on.
what he meant was he didn't use actual floor plans. You know what I mean? There's one thing to diagram the concept or map out the concept, but actually doing a plan of the house as a physical object is something different.
Yeah, that's true. So he may have planned it. You're right. He may have planned it in a more methodical way, but just not really quite in line
Could
with
this work as a real house kind of thing?
what Raven has done. Yeah.
Who knows? We don't know.
Yeah. Which is, that's pretty brilliant anyway. Manson obviously, it's very artistic. It's very cool. What he came up with. Okay, so here is my version of. Can you see that? It looks like parts of it are getting chopped off there. I can't minimize it anymore.
No, this
Can
is.
you see
You can see it at the bottom.
Yeah.
29.
Okay, you can or cannot?
We can.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. So this is all cleaned up. This is my version of, or this is when I diagrammed it out. This is what the path looks like for me. Consequently, I've looked into the Abyss, and it is the same path. It's just that he's kind of turned it sideways. So his number one starts on the left side. Like if you took this whole diagram and switched it 90 degrees counterclockwise, that's his version of this image. So, which is cool.
I kind of like yours better because it's like going into the depths of the maze. You're going down.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think there's a better. I think his are brilliant. It's cool. I still have, even at this point, I have some cleanup work to do. I like how he took. Still makes connections to and skulls to these all go to the trap or that sort of thing. I still kind of have to do that. I also like how I haven't yet gone and put a label for each room to kind of remind you which room it is. This just kind of has the room number. So now his is more built out, but I like my layout too. It's cool. It works for me. So
yeah.
Did you say something, Sarah?
No.
I guess not. I
think the labels, you should just pick whatever your favorite word is in the text, even if it's not at all relevant to the overall topic of the word.
Even if it doesn't help you at all, try and figure out which room it is. Just my favorite word. My favorite word for room 30 is the. So that's what I give it. I'll put the over room 30. How about that? Okay. Cool. So in here, now on the path. Okay. Before I go any further, I should have done this at the beginning, and this is kind of a given because it's Mazecast. This is very, very, very spoiler heavy. We're talking about the basic concepts of the main very first thing you're trying to do is figure out what the path is. So if you've looked this far and you don't want to spoil anything, well, you've probably already, if you've taken a close look, you've spoiled a lot already. But from here on out, there's spoilers abound. Like, we're heavy spoilery here.
Spoilers, the whole show.
Yes, right. And we'll be going into room spoilers later on, too. So.
Excellent.
So here we are with the path. I almost kind of want to start talking. Well, I'll talk about this later. Let's talk about the once we start going through it and going room by room. I want to start with the intro pages and all that stuff, because there's some cool stuff there. But we're just talking about how the layout is and how it works. So as you can see, the 16 steps. You've basically got 3 steps before you go to room 4. Room 4 is central to the entire maze. Not only does he say it in book 4, but it also, as I was doing this, you can't see it from this map, but from the other map, that room 4 is the only room, aside from like room 24, that doesn't have any two-way connections to it. Every single door from this room is one way, and none of the other rooms that I found do that. I mean, I'll have to double check. Maybe the trap is like that, but it's fairly unique. Room 4 really is. I mean, he kind of hints that it's kind of unique in the book, and that's true. Not only is it the only page that you have to enter twice to complete the 16 steps, but yeah, it has no two-way connections between rooms.
I think that's really cool. I never noticed that before, and I think that really underscores the nature of it as being it's a very pivotal and very heavy decision-making room, which the text kind of hints at as well. So,
right.
Yeah, because that's really cool, and I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Knowledge for sure.
And then the next step is you go to room 29. Room 29 is the trick room where
Spoilers!
Yep, huge spoilers. This will break the entire maze for you. Okay, room 29. In this one, this is where you have to figure out that there's a secret door in the room. It is, I mean, every time even now, I still look at the room. I mean, not that I've been looking that long, but every time I look at the room, I mean, it's like I still find one more thing that reiterates that the door to room 17 is there. And, I mean, there's all kinds of hints in the room that point that out. Too many to ignore and say, oh, it's not a room or it's not really there. And the maze doesn't work if you don't use it this way anyway. So the secret door is in room 29, and that door leads to room 17. Room 17 leads to room 45, which is the center of the maze, although you still have a lot more steps to go. It's not numerically the center, but as far as how many more rooms you have to get through to the end, but it is where the main riddle of the maze is, and there's a lot of stuff in there. From there, you go to the correct way. There are multiple ways that you can continue through the maze, through the path. And I guess this will be a good place to stop and say, you can go through the rooms in the path, and you can have as short as, you can get from room 1 back to room 1 in as short as, I think, 5 pages, but it can take way more than 16 steps. But if you want to hit room 45 in the middle, like he's saying, and get to room 1 in 16 steps, the next room that you have to go to is room 23. I mean, you could just take an endless circle from room 28 to 23 back to 45, and there's actually quite a few of these connections in here. After 23 is room 8, and then room 12, and room 39 before you go back to room 4. I mean, if you wanted to do endless circles in this part of the maze, you could go from room 12 to 2 to 24 to 8 to 12 and do that as many times as you want. You can basically get as many steps as you want to finish the maze, but to get to 16, you have to go through this path. Go back to room 4, and I'm excited to talk about room 4 when we get to it, to talk about what I found, because it is pretty slick. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just noticed something when you were talking, which is that you're trying to find a 16-step path, and the central weird room that you have to go through twice is number 4, and 4 squared is 16. So that's kind of
Yeah.
What?
What? Yeah.
I never noticed that.
Cool stuff like that around. And once again, whether or not that's intentional or not, it's still cool. We'll take it. We'll give it to him.
Okay.
And then after room 4, which, like I was saying, is really cool the way that it splits, and the hint that they give you that now you're supposed to go to room 15 instead of room 29, I thought that part was pretty cool. Then room 15 is your next step. Then room 37, which goes to 20, and then back to 1. And once again, on this last step of the maze, you can crisscross all over the place. You can go from 15 to 30 to 42 to 37 to add another couple of extra steps to the path. But yeah, if you want to do 16, that's it. 26, 30, 42, 4, 29, 17, 45, 23, 8, 12, 39, 4, 15, 37, 20, and back to 1. So when I was taking a look at where to put rooms and which parts of the maze, there are some other rooms that aren't part of the shortest part of the path, but they still belong to the path. They're connections. You can take one or two. There are two-way connections between them and other parts of the path. They don't really belong in or connect to, other than maybe a one-way connection, to the loop. And keep in mind, a lot of these rooms have one-way connections to the loop and one-way connections to the trap. I don't have any of those connections on this one, just to clean it up. But if you look on into the abyss, yeah.
Except for 4 going to 24, you have that.
Right.
Just to keep the threat of death looming over us at all times, just so that we.
Yeah. Exactly. Yep. So the other rooms that are part of this section of the maze, but aren't necessarily on the 16 steps, are room 5. Which the significant thing about room 5, just from a layout point of view or taking a look at a diagramming point of view, is the fact that if you go through that room, that will take you through the shortest path through the maze. If you don't hit 45, you can go 26, 35, 20, and 1. So you're back to room 1 in 5 steps. So 4 of the rooms. Room 2, which I think you guys can probably give greater insight later, but it's just kind of in between room 28 or 29 and 12, and it's I guess you could. It's just one way that you can take a misstep on the short path and take more steps than you need to get to the end, that kind of thing. It can trip you up. When you've figured out most of the path and you're just trying to figure out which rooms are the 16, then 2 is one way to kind of clutter it up a little bit. Like I said, from pure diagramming point of view, I mean, we're not even talking about all the cool puzzles and tips and tricks that you have to figure out to figure out each of the puzzles you have to figure out to determine that this was the shortest path. And then in room, next connected to room 45 and 23, there's rooms 28 and 32. And for me anyway, my experience was when I was figuring all this out, the thing that clued me in to the fact that there was even a secret door was, and you can look at my blog at the post that I came up with there. I was like, oh, there's a problem here, guys, because I did this study or tried this thing out where instead of trying to go from room 1 to room 45, I tried to go from room 45 and work my way backwards. And if you do that, you get stuck with only being able to go to rooms 28, 32, and 23 and 17. There's just this loop that you now. Okay, I guess what I'm saying is there's no way to get into this section of the maze. You can get out of it. There are other one-way exits, but you can't get into it. Go ahead.
There's no way into 17. The only way into 17 is from 29.
Right, yeah. And similarly, there's no way into 28 or 32 or 23. So the only way to get to room 45, I mean, like I was saying, there's one-way rooms out, but there's no way in. So it's an encapsulated area of the maze. And I was like, well, if you can't get into this area of the maze, how are you supposed to solve it? Which means there has to be some kind of trick somewhere that isn't very obvious what the room numbers are, which is what led me to a search. And I think I totally just lucked onto it. Was kind of dumb. I went to this page, the page that has the walled up with the jester hat, the walled up door with the jester hat over it.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah, 39, I think.
that's 39. Let me actually go there. Anyway, I went to that one, and I was like, oh, well, there's like a jester or something caught behind there. Maybe that has something to do with the secret door. And then the guy in room 29 who's turned upside down, to me, he kind of looked like a jester, and the way that his feet were dangling, they looked like a jester's hat. So I was like, oh, well, there's the jester. And then when I figured out and I took a close look at room 29, and I looked at it, and I'm like, that might not have been the hint that Manson was trying to give to figure out to get to room 17, but I'll take it, Yeah, so that was cool. Anyway, so that's the path. I think the only other things that I can discuss about with the path that I thought about, like I said, from a diagramming point of view or from how the maze is laid out, is that there are 6 sections of the maze, areas of the maze that you can go through, aside from room 4 and 24. There's 6 sections of the maze where you can take 2-way trips and just wander around. As long as if you don't take any of the one-way doors out of it to somewhere else, there's 6 areas, and 3.5 of these are encapsulated in the path. You've got this area that I was talking about before, where there's 17, 32, 23, 28, and 45. There's a small area of 29, 8, 12, 2, and 39, which all have, to get out of there, they're all one-way connections out. Well, like I was saying, room 4 and room 24 are by themselves. They're like their own area. There's this section that has room 30, 42, 37, and 15 that kind of make a cross area. Those are encapsulated. That's an encapsulated area. And then room 5, 21, and 26, you can all wander into most of the loop with that. There's a small section of the loop that I kind of call the terraces that is cordoned off, that you can't just wander back and forth between. But most of the loop in these 4 rooms are all another area. And I don't know how significant that is to anything, but I just thought it was interesting from a design point of view. And obviously, if Manson said he didn't lay out any maps, then it wasn't necessarily intentional. And maybe I'm just putting up a bunch of red herrings here, huh? I don't know. Anyway, so okay.
It's the first time that anybody floated a red herring on the Mazecast, so it would be a historic event indeed.
Nice. That's right. Okay, so we've been going at this for about half an hour now. So, before I talk about other areas of the maze, you guys have any comments or questions or anything? I tend to talk a lot and quickly, so it's hard to interject. But
well, that's okay. We're used to that. Trust me.
Yeah, awesome.
Very natural.
Yeah, got it. I'm a nice fit, is what you're saying. It's fantastic. Yeah, don't be afraid to interject. It's not because I don't want you to. If I see you trying, I'll stop.
Let's go to the loop.
Okay, so you want to talk about the loop?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so I am actually going to go back to, if I can find it here. I'm going to go back to my big picture to kind of give you an idea of how I ended up doing the loop, the all connections portion. Okay, so on my all connections map here, the middle portion here, and you guys can see my cursor, right? It
Yep.
looks like you can, but
Yep.
okay, cool. So this whole area here is the section that we just covered. That is the path. Okay. Like I was saying, in Into the Abyss, his map of the path is turned counterclockwise 90 degrees, but this is the same. The connections are all the same. Now, when I did the path, the next thing I actually did was try and figure out the trap over here on the right. So I don't know. Do you want me to talk about the trap right now, or should we go into the loop?
We'll talk about the trap if you want.
Sure.
Yeah, let's do that. It kind of makes sense because we've been talking about it a little bit, and it's really significant. So off to the right here is a section of the maze that is completely shut off from all of the rest of the maze. There are only one-way connections into, and you can see by all the orange arrows that there are a lot of them. Most of them are from the path, but there are, I think, 2 that are from the loop. But if you get into this area of the maze, you've basically lost. You're going to end up in room 24. If you just keep moving around, the only way out is 24, which is the Abyss, and it's a one-way trip. Which means that it is really interesting that he created this section of 6 rooms where you can, and part of it is circular too. I have it as a triangle over here, but you can wander around these rooms and for quite a while before realizing that you really you're not going to get anywhere. So, and it is a cool area of the maze. But the significant thing to understand about this area is just the fact that, if you manage to get here, there's still puzzles and things to be found here, but it's not on the path, and you're not going to be able to escape. There's only a one-way trip to the Abyss. And we can talk about the rooms in here more later, but that's essentially the gist of it. And once again, it is interesting from this overview area. You can see that there are a lot of ways to get trapped in the maze. So, let's see.
One thing that I think that White Raven's diagram captures, that I think there's a consensus that people do seem to think that this was deliberate on Manson's part, was to design the trap in the shape of a key, ironically. And this is supported by the image of the broken key that appears in room 38, which is the slide room, the C-Nose 8 room.
Got it. So if I flipped over the 24 here, like if I put room 24 below 11 and then kind of flip the whole thing top to bottom,
then it would have a key-like shape. And the key image, the key engraving in 38 is broken in exactly the sort of place where 38 needs to be, which is the edge of the circle where it continues onto the rod.
That is so cool.
Yeah, so people generally tend to think that. I don't disagree with your decision that you wanted to give 24 a place of prominence in the greater diagram, but mapping out the trap. People seem to think that that's, and I think that's probably.
No, now that you pointed out, I totally agree. I will rewrite this diagram. So, and that's another cool thing is I'm just looking at it from a diagramming point of view. But you know what? There is a right and wrong way to do it. So I mean,
I hope you know what? I think Vince is probably going to take me to task for spoiling you in this way and sort of taking away the experience by betraying that to you.
So actually, at this, I guess I would like to say I kind of said it before the podcast, but I'll say it again now. Now that I've had a chance to take a look at the maze and spend a few months with it, I'm far more comfortable. I'm more lax at finding stuff. I don't mind you guys. Don't think you have to hold back to hide everything from me anymore. I was that way for the first couple of months, but now let's just talk about it. I think especially with the time limit that's coming up, let's not hold back. If you guys have things to say, I have no. In fact, part of it is part of the experience, I think, here recording it is seeing what my reaction is to finding out that, oh yeah, that is cool, learning new things, or even just the reaction of finding out that what I thought was right, I'm actually getting right, kind of thing. So, and okay, so that is the trap. So let's talk about the loop next. And the reason why I brought up all the connections when I was talking about the loop is because I made my own version of what I thought the loop would look like. And then when I took a look at the diagram on Into the Abyss, he does have it drawn differently than what I have here. So.
Oh, that's right. You see the diagrams on the Abyss, so you know about the key shape of the trap as it's represented on the Abyss. So.
Right. Yep. I didn't realize that I hadn't learned that was why it was shaped that way. I didn't read about that. So don't worry about it. It's all good. I'm happy. Okay, so the path is this area. I have the trap over here to the right, and I pulled it to the right on purpose. Well, not necessarily to the right or left. I pulled it away from the other areas of the maze on purpose so that you could kind of see the lines, and color-coded the lines so that you could more easily see kind of what the problem here is or what the issue is, or that the trap is a thing. Like you'll get stuck in it. So if it's not part of the path, if it's not part of the trap, then pretty much everything else in the maze here is encapsulated, at least on Into the Abyss, into the loop. Now the way that go ahead.
I just want to say, Brent, I think it's cool before we move on from the trap. It's cool to see how many connections there are to the trap. There's so many.
Yeah. There are. Yeah, and that's where I think this kind of a study or this kind of an analysis really kind of helps point things out. So.
And I especially, I didn't realize that there was such you mentioned it a little while ago. I didn't realize that there was such an imbalance between the number of trap entrances from the path and the number of trap entrances from the loop. I had always sort of had it in my head that it was fairly equal, but now I see, as you say, that there are actually very few entrances to the trap.
Yeah, there's actually only two, I think. Room 41 has one, and then room, what is this, 19? That leads you there too. So other than that, I mean, all the other one-way connections are from the path. So. It doesn't lead to there.
How difficult he wanted it to be to navigate the path, that he really, really concentrated so much of the danger onto it. And the loop is mostly just atmospheric filler, and maybe also hints to the end of the guide and stuff, as people have also speculated.
Right, yeah, it's a big distraction. Okay, so So the way that I ended up with it was I was kind of interested, I don't know why, I organized it into areas that I've kind of talked about a few minutes ago, where areas that you could travel back and forth between with these two-way connections. And now that you see the overall area, there's all of these areas in the loop. You can move back and forth between. If you go to the right room and the right door, you can travel back and forth through this as many times as you want. You can go all the way to, room 30, which is at 35 or 36. Yeah, 36, and travel all the way back to room 41, and just go back and forth as many times as you want. You can even travel. This is what I was saying. You can actually travel if you go through room 1. You can even travel to these parts of the path, and this is kind of all one encapsulated area. And then the second encapsulated area that I didn't think was part of the loop, but I see now that the way White Raven has drawn it up, that he definitely includes it in there, and I understand why too, is this area over here, which I kind of called the terraces, which are 4 rooms that you can, if you go from 44 to 21 to 31 to 19, you can travel back and forth between this area before leaving. But the problem with this area of the terraces is and I guess I'll talk about the terraces now. The problem with it is that, well, let me bring up the terraces mini-map that I have here. Where's that? Give me a second.
Now, I had never heard of sectioning them off like this, but I had actually really liked this classification, which had never occurred to me before. And this is another thing that your graphs illuminated for the first time that I hadn't realized, is that there's only one entrance into this area, and there's only one safe exit. So I kind of like having them as their own little
subsections. Yeah.
But you were saying that's not the problem.
And I don't necessarily think this is the right way to organize it either. I really like White Raven the way that he does have the loop all set up where it's one way. I'll talk about how I organize that section later. But the terraces here, it's like you were saying. I mean, you from room 1 you go to room 21, and then once you're here, and these are all outdoor areas. These are all areas that have trees. There's no roof. There's a sky that some of them have pillars and that sort of thing. I think one of them is room 19. Isn't that the one with guys playing something? Or oh no, that's the one with the big statue, huh?
It looks like a bullhead.
Yeah, that's the picture.
Yeah. So, but they're all outdoor areas. So that's kind of why I called them the terraces. But you can travel between these terraces area. There's even a one-way between 44 and 31. But the only exits, there's only 3 exits from this area. One of them is to room 11, which is in the trap. There is a direct link from room 21 straight to 24, which coincidentally is the shortest way to get stuck in the abyss. As you guys have pointed out many times before on previous podcasts, you can go from 1 to 21 to 24, and there you go, the end, start over. But the only way to get out without ending up eventually in room 24 is if you take this one-way doorway to room 18, which leads to the rest of the loop. You guys have anything you want to say before I bring the rest of the loop up?
So tell us why you decided. Tell us why you saw White Raven's logic and decided to fold that back into the greater loop category. Because, like I was saying, I was kind of convinced by your logic of separating this off into its own area, considering that there's
sure. Yeah. No. Let me bring up his image so you can kind of see so everyone can kind of see what we're talking about. Okay. So let me pull it up here. So I can figure out how buttons work. Okay, there we go. Can you guys see the numbers? Is that big enough for the image of the loop?
It's okay.
Okay. So what all I did was the area I call the terraces is here, and he included them in his version of the loop. And the way that he has it, his loop is one big one-way circle, where you can go here, and then there's a one-way trip into this area, a one-way trip into this area, and then it goes into the rest of the area and makes this big loop, right? And I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I just think there's 2 different ways, or multiple ways that you can look at these things. Of course, there are the complexity of the maze. I think his way is cool. I think that there might be some value in considering the terraces to be by themselves as well. I just don't think as with many things in maze, I don't think there's like a best way here. I think any way that's going to let you see more clearly how things work, it's going to be the best way for you. So, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Andrew, did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I can see how.
Let me finish. You're right. I guess I didn't totally.
Well, no, I can see how that means you have to.
In my way, you kind of have to go. You have to go from room 1 to room 41, and then my way kind of creates this loop around like this. So so you're not really. It's not self-encapsulated or there's better terming for that. My way, you kind of have to take a side jaunt to get to this area of the maze, where the way he has it designed, it's all, you don't get back to room 1 until you've gone through all these other parts of the maze. So that's and I thought that was kind of cool. So, and once again, I mean, it's
Yeah, I guess
tomato,
version of the
tomato.
loop, in your
You're
version
kind
of the
of,
loop, you can't actually go back around to 1, can you? Can we
I'm
see your
sorry.
version of the loop on the screen?
Yeah, sure. Hold on. So here's the terraces, and then let me bring up my version of the loop.
I can't see anything.
Yeah.
Can you guys see anything displayed?
Not yet. Yeah, Brent, you're not screen sharing yet.
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Or are you?
Yeah.
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 Right. So I can't. So it looks as though you can't get all the way back to 1 unless you have to work in the terraces in order to be able to get all the way back around to 1. Am I right?
So my loop, what you do actually is you go to room 41, and then 30. You take the one-way trip from 41 to 35, and it goes counterclockwise this way. So that's when I. Oh, go ahead.
I was just trying to go clockwise instead of counterclockwise, but now of
Right.
course I see. No, you can go counterclockwise.
Yeah. So if you go counterclockwise, and like I was saying, I was just trying to figure this out on my own. I hadn't looked at the diagram over on Into the Abyss or anything like that. So this is what I came up with, and I was like, oh, I solved it, and then I realized that yeah, he has the terraces in there too. So in my mind, I like them both. I like, like I said, just whatever is going to help you to understand how the maze connects together, because the way the maze is laid out and how things connect, I think, are going to help you solve the maze too. Because once you get the path right, really all the rest of the problems in the book and the maze is figuring out what all the puzzles are on all the pages, right? How do you figure out why is that door the correct door? And I actually, once I saw that each room has its own picture down at the bottom or whatever, where he shows you why the door, which door is the right door is there, because he shows you how to get back to room 1 from every single. I mean, I haven't taken a look at the trap rooms yet, but at least all the ones in the loop, and I'm sure the ones on the path. There's this cool red line that just kind of shows you, and I thought that was cool. So, does that make sense?
Yeah. Let's see. I think he probably just doesn't even have those for.
Yeah.
Well, you can't have them for. I mean, you could have the fastest way to get into the abyss.
Yeah, he has a placement within the trap map, but he doesn't have a. There's no line. There's no how did you get here because.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So let me finish explaining about how I came up with the loop. So yeah, it really was my mindset was finding these areas of the maze that you could travel back and forth in between. That you unless you took a one-way door out of it, you could just travel through this area endlessly back and forth through doors. And so that's what this area of the loop did. Was it created this whole area of rooms, and what he's done, I mean, if you look at the connections, these are the same exact connections that White Raven has on his. It's just laid out differently. If you give the connections to, everyone is going to come up with their own idea of how this thing is going to look if they have to take this puzzle, the spaghetti, and organize it themselves. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. Do you have any questions before? Oh, okay, so exits. Let's talk about exits from this area. So the only way to get out of the loop, whether you're using the terraces or not, is from room 41 to room 1. Well, alive anyway. There's that way, right? And then there's 2 other ways to get out of the loop. This area of the loop. You can go to room 14, and room 14 will that's one that is a very dangerous room, because unless you turn right back around and go back to 10, you're going to lose. You either go to room 43, which is part of the trap, or you can just take the one-way trip to the abyss right from room 14. And then room 41 also has an exit from there to the trap as well. And like you were saying earlier, Andrew, that's really it. Like there's no there's no one-way doorways that lead back into the path. It's either room 1 or the trap. So what were you saying, Andrew? I kind of cut you off.
Oh yeah, no. Yes, I knew about the design whereby there's only one entrance back onto the path from here. But what was so surprising to me that I discovered for the first time looking at your charts was how few entrances to the trap there are in the loop versus how many of them there are from the path, where practically all of the danger lies when you're actually traversing the path, which I think make it even harder.
Right. Okay, and so I think that's a pretty good overview of the maze itself and how it's laid out. I guess the only other things that I maybe blogged about that I didn't include here is I did have a short discussion about entering and exiting the maze. There really is only one way to enter through room 1, and there are only 2 ways to exit. You can either find your way back to room 1 and get out, or you get to room 24 and it ends. You are caught in the abyss, and you're stuck in the maze forever. You guys have any other comments or questions or anything like that?
This was a meaty episode. This was a great overview. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Cool to look at just the structure like that, sort of totally divorced from the pictures and the puzzles.
Right.
It's cool.
Right. And like I said, where this, I mean, I've basically been doing this part of the puzzle the last few months rather than focusing on all the other really cool visual, all the actual puzzles and stuff in the maze. And this part, mainly because this part does interest me. I mean, for no other reason, from a design point of view. I kind of want to open the watch up and tinker it and see how it was built kind of thing. But it also definitely will help in the fact that if you know what the layout is, then you have a way to confirm your suspicions about, okay, I think that these clues lead to this answer, and now you can kind of answer that since of course there's no just some place you can go to get absolute answers. I mean, Into the Abyss is doing it now, but before then, it was all speculation. So, I mean, this is really the only way you can do it. I do want to make one last note. I do understand that there was some, I don't remember where it was, whether it was a comment in Into the Abyss, or whether it was on one of the, I mean, I only watched like 6 or 7 of the Mazecasts. There was some comment that I heard somewhere that Manson, if you want to do Maze the way that Manson intended for it to be done, this entire process is kind of cheating. Like, he really would want you to just open the book, figure out what the puzzles were, and determine the door that way. And there is something to be said for, I mean, there's no way that he could have written the book without me being able to do this kind of analysis, just the way it was designed. That doesn't mean, I mean, it's kind of like maybe if there was a way he could design it where I couldn't do this analysis, he would have done it. I mean, maybe Room 17 was his way of trying to avoid that or whatever, but anyway, I did just kind of want to say that. I am cognizant of the fact that some people might consider this route cheating, but I had fun with it, and I do enjoy this part of it. So
I think that pretty much everybody tried to do this within their first 6 months of owning the book. Probably everybody tried. Probably most people didn't do as thorough a job as you did or White Raven did, but pretty much everybody gives this a shot, I think.
Yeah,
right.
I had this like giant piece of paper and like scribbles and little circles everywhere. Pencils.
Yeah.
So we're all, it's the original sin of being a maze participant.
I agree. There's probably something to that too. I mean, cool. Well, I mean, we've been at this for what, probably the better part of an hour, so I think that's a pretty good podcast right there.
I just want to say one thing before you sign off, Brent,
Sure.
and that is just that, okay, knowing that this 45-month time limit is coming, we all want to know about the guide puzzle. It would be nice to solve all the rooms too, and I think this is just a call out to everybody who is watching, everyone who's interested in Maze, to go and try and help with that guide puzzle. And I'm just saying, because I feel like a total loner on the abyss right now, because I'm the only one typing out these questions. I need some company on there, you guys.
You're putting us all to shame. It's not no, you're the star.
Yeah, but none of it's doing anything.
So Brent, one of the things that sort of sparked a light in my head was it was something you said about the path, which made me think that maybe the loop is actually the guide path, like the guide puzzle. Maybe it's on the loop rather than on the path.
Sure.
Maybe every room of the loop. I have a suspicion that might be true, and that there's clues to the guide in the loop, in every room of the loop, from the beginning to the end.
Oh, you should totally post that on Into the Abyss. I mean, maybe, you know how White Raven was hinting that there is some overall thing, and he's really surprised no one has hit on it. Maybe that's the thing he was talking about. Maybe maybe no one has mentioned that maybe the loop is like you were saying, the puzzle for the guide. So
I think there's something to it for sure. In the
yeah,
sense,
post it.
he said it was a location. He didn't say a room, and I guess you could classify the loop as a location.
Yeah, for sure. And that it would be kind of surprising that no one hit on that by now. So cool. Well, do you guys have any other comments or anything? Sounds like cool. Well, this is fun. Oh, I guess. Well, I will say. So next time, what we can do is next time let's plan on doing. We'll do an analysis. Well, not an analysis. Let's start walking through the maze and walking through the path. So instead of, like I was saying earlier, focusing on each room and tearing it apart, let's just quickly try and figure out what the answer, make a few comments is for each room, and move our way through the path, and maybe we can gain some extra insight through movement through the maze rather than focusing on one room at a time. So let's plan on doing that. That'll be like next week's episode. Let's do the path. And to be fair, I have insight into. Now I'm going through, and for me the process for the puzzles, I mean, this analysis I'm good at. Figuring out the puzzles is really hard. Like, even finding like one or two clues on a room can be really difficult sometimes. So I have a significant amount of clues or tips or things to start for about through page 45, through the path. I mean, I have a good idea of why I think those the right answers are the way they are, but I still need to work on the rest of it, so I might lean heavily on your guys' answers. So.
No, this would be really interesting to see what solutions you think that what solutions you've found on your own without corroborating them with other sources. I would rather we didn't go and tell you the solutions that we found.
Yeah, and I'm at the point.
Alex, you should also talk about your other episodes coming up as well.
Oh yeah, so this is probably not coming out tomorrow, but definitely the weekend. I'm doing an artist series, which Sarah is doing the second one on.
I am.
I mean, you'll eventually get the chance to do it on Gory, right?
Yeah.
So my episode is going to be on Piranesi, who is an Italian engraver from the 1700s. That's all I'll say for now until I release the episode with mandolin music in the background.
Yes, I've heard it. It's good.
Sung by Greg.
Yeah, absolutely. If only.
Cool. Well, we'll see you guys next time.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Signing off.
Later.
Bye.